not-for-profit organization. As always, please feel free to contact us with your comments, suggestions, or questions, and stay with us. The Real Buffalo News is coming up next.
The following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or another print disability that makes reading, holding a book, or turning a page difficult or impossible. The content is copyrighted by the respective publishers. For more information, please visit us on the web at nfradioreading.org. Your Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service now presents a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, July 24th, 2027. Let's go with 2026. Yeah, right. Don't want to
Jumping
rush
ahead of
things.
ourselves
Sorry
here.
about that. Your readers today are
JJ Patek.
and Don Williams, who's busy waking up here. Today, mostly sunny. That's the weather forecast anyway. It says a high of 82 and a low of 63. Tomorrow, a brief shower or two.
Oh, no.
High 83 and a low of 65. Sunday, a shower and thunderstorm with a high of 79 and a low of 66. Not a whole lot of variation in the temperature throughout the week. Mostly cloudy and humid on Monday with a high of 80. Mostly cloudy and a thunderstorm on Tuesday with a high of 78. Occasional rain on Wednesday with a high of 75. And then finally mostly sunny on Thursday with a high of 77. Lows in the mid-60s throughout most of the week. High temperature yesterday, 73 and a low of 50. That compares to an average 81 for a high and 64 for the low. The record high was 93 back in 1933 and the low 48 in 1981. Last year was 88 on the 24th of July. I'm going to get that date right. I have to keep reading it. No precipitation in the last 24 hours, but year to date, we're still 6.25 inches above normal precipitation. The sun rose today at 5:59, just before 6 o'clock, and will set tonight at 8:45. Nationally, Palm Springs, California had the high temperature yesterday with 109 degrees, and here's a new entry in the category of national extremes. Bradford, Pennsylvania, with a low of 38.
Wow.
Yeah, that's what I said. Now, today's trivia question, weather trivia. How much oxygen does a healthy lawn produce? And they give us the answer here in terms of what it will do for us. A 5-by-5 foot patch of healthy lawn supplies enough oxygen continuously for an adult. So you have a 5-by-5 patch of healthy lawn and you've got all the oxygen you need.
And if you got a bigger lawn than that, your whole family can breathe.
There you go. I got enough to supply the whole block.
Really?
And I know that when I go to mow it, and it takes the kind of time it does.
Tell me about it.
Well, what's on the front page?
Well, what we've got is the EPA and the DEC are testing soil for radiation in Niagara. This is from Mackenzie Schumann. State and federal government workers began taking soil samples from the yard of a Niagara County home this week to test the radioactive materials there. The work began over the objections of some residents who feared that disturbing the soil near their homes would make any radioactive contamination more dangerous. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency and the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation started testing the soil at the home beginning Tuesday morning, but paused due to weather. Work resumed Wednesday morning by digging holes in the residents' yard to reach different soil depths. On Thursday, the DEC and EPA teams were expected to conduct ground surveys at 30 additional properties in Niagara County. In total, 39 properties in Niagara County have been screened since May. The testing follows aerial and vehicle-based surveys beginning in October of 2023 that found elevated levels of radiation in western Niagara County. Those surveys have been followed up by ground surveys involving the EPA and DEC officials walking specialized radiation detection equipment around residents' yards. In total, 121 property owners were notified in May that their properties may contain elevated radiation levels. Of those, the DEC and EPA have so far identified 6 locations where radiation levels require further investigation. The remaining properties did not contain concerning radiation levels, according to the DEC. In some residents' yards, the radiation detected by the EPA and DEC is nearly 25 times higher than background levels. However, it is unclear what type of radiation is in the soil or where the radiation is coming from. It is possible the radiation could be coming from radioactive slag, a waste product of the chemicals and metals manufacturing industry, but the region also has a history of involvement in the Manhattan Project to develop nuclear weapons. After analyzing these soil samples, we'll be able to better understand the depth, concentration, and composition of the soil that contains radionuclides. The DEC spokesperson T.J. Pignataro wrote in an email statement to the Buffalo News on Wednesday afternoon. The yard sampled Tuesday and Wednesday was in a neighborhood just south of Reservoir State Park in the town of Niagara. Carolyn Johnson, a homeowner whose yard was scheduled to be tested by the EPA on Tuesday and Wednesday, said she was unhappy the testing was supposed to happen while she remained living in her home. They're trying to come onto our properties against our wishes, she wrote the news in a text message. It will expose our whole family, our neighbors, our pets to the radiation. Johnson and her husband, John, along with other property owners who have elevated radiation levels found around their homes, including Lexi Hawk and Trevor Bradley, Jacqueline and Jeremy Linkowski, and Kelly and Mike Motika, have demanded that the EPA quickly relocate them to different homes to avoid further radiation exposure. The officials from the agency reportedly told the residents that soil sampling will be done as safely as possible with the ground wetted before digging to ensure little to no dust is kicked up in the process. The soil sampling at the residents' homes is expected to continue for the rest of the week, Pignataro wrote in his email to the news. The EPA on Friday began working at those relocation requests, but as of Wednesday, no resident appeared to have a permanent solution. Starting Tuesday, the DEC and EPA started conducting further studies of the right-of-way in Niagara County to better inform their investigations, Pignataro said. The agencies also received signed property access agreements from 6 additional property owners after representatives knocking on the doors of 13 properties, according to Pignataro. In total, the agency has received permission from 101 property owners in Niagara County to conduct radiation surveys.
I guess that's going to be an ongoing story for a while.
Yeah.
Meanwhile, Jonathan Epstein reports the Younghurst developer who owns the 50-acre Seneca Mall site is hoping the Costco store planned for the long vacant property will be a catalyst for much broader development. Benchmark Group is planning over a dozen new buildings as part of the redevelopment of the dormant complex with spaces for multiple retailers, 4 restaurants, and Tops Markets, in addition to the region's second Costco. Martin Delabovi, Benchmark's executive vice president, confirmed the social media post by West Seneca Town Supervisor Gary Dixon that Costco Wholesale Corporation will be opening the massive discount membership store, including a fueling station, at the former mall as part of what it hopes will become a much bigger project. With its loyal following, landing Costco is a major coup for Benchmark and its subsidiary, Benchmark Streamline. They are the best of the best, he said. And with Costco's broad customer appeal, he's hoping it will bring in the consumer traffic needed to attract even more stores to a property that once was a popular shopping site but was driven out of favor by the opening of the Walden Galleria in 1989. We did not buy this site, only develop it for Costco, Delbovi said. We're going to develop this center. Besides Costco, there are also plans for a building with 4 junior stores, that's junior in quotes here, of 18,000 to 25,000 square feet in each. Currently envisioned on the plans is 22,000 square feet each, and another top one-level box of 80,300 square feet. The western portion of the mall site will hold 3 buildings of 10,000 square feet each, 2 for retailers and 1 for a restaurant, with a 7,980 square foot office building next to them. Tentative plans also include a 2,925 square foot retail building and a 2,380 square foot drive-through restaurant near the office building. And the center of the site would hold a 2,500 square foot bank branch, a retail building of 9,100 square feet, and 3 drive-through restaurants of almost 5,000 square feet, 2,300 square feet, and 2,380 square feet, respectively. Delabove said there would likely be a mix of quick service and sit-down restaurants. We think the area needs a lot of new retail. This is an opportunity, Delabove said. This is why we've been working on this for 2 years and pushed to buy it. We were excited about bringing a new retail to that demographic area, and having Costco as an anchor is tremendous. Delabove would not identify the other retailers and businesses yet, but he expects that by mid-August we will have most of our junior boxes committed to, and we'll have a lineup that we can feel comfortable with. However, he said, Tops will be retaining its own 92,000-plus square foot store at the northeastern corner of the site. Tops is a strong anchor there now, he said. We bought this site with Tops and with a lot of land that we felt could be developed for a very successful center. They're in a location that they feel comfortable with. Benchmark and Costco filed their plans with the town on Wednesday, Delabove said. On Wednesday, Delabove said Costco will take up a new 158,000 square foot building that will be constructed on the site with 812 parking spaces once the project receives town approval. This was the first official confirmation that the Seattle-based retailer was coming to West Seneca, although it had been widely speculated, as Benchmark has been working on the deal for over 2 years and has been designing the infrastructure and geotechnical work for the past 8 months. Even so, Delabove stressed the announcement was premature because the deal is still not final, although it's slated for initial site plan review by the town on August 13th. He noted multiple approvals are still needed and major modifications are still possible to the site, citing a recent change from underground stormwater detention to surface detention ponds that will become site features. It's not 100% sealed, done, that they're going to be on that site. We're still working through issues, he said of Costco. Can I sit here and tell you definitely that Costco is going to be an anchor at that center? No. Originally built in the 1960s, the Seneca Mall was considered the premier shopping center in the South Towns, but declined after McKinley Mall and the Galleria opened. The Seneca Mall closed and was demolished in 1994, leaving a derelict eyesore. And the 55-acre site has been mostly vacant ever since, with cracked and crumbled pavement pitted with potholes and weeds. A former Kmart store was closed and torn down in 2019, leaving just the Tops. An out-of-state developer proposed a $700 million redevelopment project in 2012 to transform the site into 3 million square feet of retail, residential, recreational, and hotel space dubbed Seneca Place, but it never came to fruition. In 2024, Benchmark Streamline bought 12 vacant parcels totaling 48 acres for $7.96 million, while Dallas-based real estate investment firm NS Retail Holdings bought the remaining 7 acres, including the Tops and the former Kmart land. The town board voted to rezone the land last year to support Benchmark's plans, which anticipate adding 500,000 square feet of new commercial building space.
I hope that works out. That would be a good thing.
I wish them luck.
We need to have something happen there. It's a good location. Well, from Catherine Houghton and Arthur Allen of KFF News, Health News, U.S. scientists view prosecutions as part of a federal campaign. From Hamilton, Montreal, the Trump administration has stepped up arrests and public condemnation of federal scientists studying viruses as the world faced one of its worst Ebola epidemics. In June, Vincent Munster, an infectious disease researcher at the National Institutes of Health, was charged with bringing biological specimens in the U.S. without proper documents. Weeks later, Senator Rand Paul, a Republican from Kentucky, ordered Anthony Fauci, Munster's former boss, to appear before the Senate committee, alleging that he'd lied to Congress about the COVID-19 pandemic's origins. This spring, the FBI detained a former aide to Fauci, and federal officials banned a virus researcher in North Carolina from receiving federal funding. In each case, senior U.S. officials and members of Congress have leaned into unproven theories that arrogant scientists damaged rather than protected public health by recklessly experimenting with COVID and other killer viruses, including in China. Conservative groups and social influencers have amplified that view through a whirlwind of conspiracy theories, bioterrorism, fear-mongering, and anti-immigration sentiments. The recent charges stirred long-held mistrust of high-security Rocky Mountain Laboratories, where Munster works among residents of this blue-collar town in Montana built on logging. A dozen scientists interviewed for this article said any crimes or errors committed by Munster, who was transporting vials of inactivated Mpox for research purposes, seemed to be over paperwork and pose no threat to the public. Nonetheless, some colleagues in Montana said the alleged improprieties needlessly bat a hornet's nest. This just gives ammunition to the people that are trying to stop this valuable research, said Kim Hassenkrug, a scientist emeritus at the NIH who works at Rocky Mountain Labs for 31 years. Even people who have trusted us in the past, this sows seeds of distrust. How could it not? Cuts to U.S. foreign aid and research funding have left tens of millions of dollars in gaps in the fight against spreading Ebola and Mpox outbreaks, scientists told KFF Health News. When the next pandemic comes around and we need vaccines to protect ourselves, the chances are that China will develop them before we do, said Christian Anderson, an evolutionary biologist at Scripps Research. Anderson co-authored studies that stoked the ire of proponents of a theory that a lab leak started the COVID pandemic. And then Emily Hilliard, a spokesperson for the Department of Health and Human Services, which includes the NIH, said the federal government remains fully equipped to protect Americans in response to emerging public health threats. She said the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention had deployed experts domestically and internationally to respond to Ebola. Scientists like Munster are indispensable for figuring out the source of pandemic viruses, whether it's bats, pigs, rats, or some other animal, Anderson said. And then Munster is the person who goes out to Africa to get samples of bad viruses from people, says Stanley Perlman, a virologist from the University of Iowa and a longtime member of the FDA's vaccine advisory panel. He's done lots of things that need to be done, and he does them well. And while we sit around removing pandemic preparedness grants and arresting scientists and locking them up, in some cases, Dashak said, viruses are out there evolving.
Well, you're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. At 17 minutes past the hour, we turn to the editorial page. The local editors today have a pair of articles labeled Top Priority. Affordable housing needs are being served in Buffalo and Niagara Falls. Much has been written about the Canalside Housing Project and focus on affordable housing for lower-income residents rather than market-rate apartments. There are stark differences of opinions on the project's renewed purpose. However, there is no question that affordable housing is desperately needed across the country and here in the Buffalo-Niagara region. To that point, a recent article by the News' Jonathan Epstein highlights a 6-story housing project in Niagara Falls. The project will prove literally transformational as a vacant downtown parcel will be repurposed into 73 affordable and market-rate apartments, along with first-floor commercial space. The leaders of this project are Community Services for Everell in partnership with Edgemere Development. The lofty goal of the 82,000 square foot project will feature studio, 1- and 2-bedroom units, along with 4,445 square feet of ground floor commercial space to provide job readiness and workforce development training. The part about providing a space for dignity and inclusion stands out. Kelly Kinderman, Vice President of Program Support and Development for Community Services, stresses that housing, supportive services, and workforce development are all needed for an inclusive community and society. It is called The Nest and located at 333 First Street. The $39.5 million project will consist mostly of 70 affordable units for individuals and families, including 21 supportive apartments for formerly homeless survivors of domestic violence who are ready for permanent housing. For those in need of affordable housing that provides nurturing wraparound support, this will be home sweet home.
And then for affordable advantage, in terms of affordable housing in general, a recent column by the News' David Robinson offered some reason for optimism when it comes to this region. The Buffalo-Niagara region still ranks high when it comes to the most affordable place for households under the age of 40, according to a study by the Pew Research Center. That doesn't mean it's necessarily easy for buyers, especially first-time buyers. Competition among bidders remains high, and those losing out walk away frustrated. But weighing the Buffalo area against the national scene, affordable home buying for young families remains a decent bet. Again, make that quote-unquote decent bet. When placed adjacent to neighboring big cities outside the region, Buffalo's affordability may not seem as competitive. The study found that Buffalo-Niagara ranks among the top 18 U.S. markets for affordability for younger families. Consider the median sale price of homes here at $250,000, which is 2.8 times the median income that those young households earn. As noted, that is just slightly less affordable than Springfield, Illinois, which ranks as the best place for young households to afford a home, with home prices that are 3 times the median income for those families. Rochester and Syracuse also ranked higher than Buffalo on affordability. Still, Buffalo doesn't do too badly against the rest of the country. Since 2019, home prices have been headed in one direction, up, and at a faster pace than young adults' incomes. It makes the Buffalo-Niagara region even more appealing and perhaps will help retain and return young people to the area.
We'll see about that.
We'll see what happens.
Meanwhile, I got curious. I spent 3 years teaching in Niagara Falls. I wondered where that 333 First Street address is. It's directly across from the Niagara Falls Convention Center.
Oh, okay, I know where that is.
How about that? Well, turning now to the editorial cartoons.
Adam Ziglis.
Yeah, too bad you can't see this. It's charming. We have
It's great.
one of those ship in a bottle drawings. This again from Adam Ziglis, and it shows a giant warship with a few flags. One labeled Iran War, another labeled Team Testosterone, and a big bag of cash labeled $32.5 billion, a bunch of guns, and up in the bow, this man with his shirt off, waving a big scimitar-type sword, clearly meant to represent Pete Hegseth, the chairman of the Department of Defense, and it is labeled Strait of Vermouth. Mr. Hegseth, of course, well known for his drinking problem. And on the opposite page, we have Tom Stiglitz, another familiar name from the Creators Syndicate. This one labeled The Democratic Party's Frankenstein, Chuck Schumer and Bernie Sanders, and it shows the Bernie Sanders character choking the Chuck Schumer character. And it says, the monster challenges his creator's authority and exerts control by declaring himself the true master. And the Chuck Schumer character being choked is saying, in you, I have created something truly horrible. And, yeah, well.
I like Bernie Sanders over there growling.
yeah, growling.
Yeah. Well, from Clarence Page, what the latest wave of neo-Nazis actually says about Americans. On July 4th, the nation's 250th anniversary, a mysterious group of young men in khaki pants, navy blue shirts, logoed baseball caps, and white face masks surfaced in a Capitol, marching out of a downtown metro subway station and into the news. By now, they look oddly familiar, part of the menagerie of the uniformed street brawlers and torch carriers that emerged in a tumultuous first term of President Trump. And then there are unsavory historical echoes as well. Though smaller in number, the neo-Nazis in the Capitol brought to mind the 1925 parade down Pennsylvania Avenue by thousands of robed Ku Klux Klansmen in a visible show of strength. Indeed, the Patriot Front, that group that marched this month, appears to have similar publicity-seeking aims as the Klansmen of yore. Red, white, and blue wash their violent bigotry. Unfortunately for them, passers-by appear to be much more concerned about the stifling 100 100-degree heat dome and settle over the city with particular ferocity. Performers must sometimes suffer for their art. The word performative gets thrown around these days, partly, I gather, as a result of the technological revolution that has enabled us all to carry a TV studio, also known as a smartphone, around in our pockets. Given the opportunity to perform, a lot of people will do precisely that across a wide variety of media as long as they can pull in an audience.
That's very true of the Patriot Front, an ethno-nationalist group whose idea of patriotic apparently does not include non-whites, non-Christians, or apparently non-males. They were founded by Texan Thomas Rousseau after the bloody 2017 Unite the Right rally in Charlottesville, Virginia, when they split from another racist organization called Vanguard America. I first heard of the group in 2021 when members staged a protest at Chicago's City Hall, which they apparently planned to coincide with the annual anti-abortion March for Life rally in the Loop. The organizers of the latter were not pleased. I was suitably disgusted but not shocked, as I've observed these kinds of groups before. Today's Patriot Front reminds me of Frank Collin, the neo-Nazi leader who famously waged a legal battle in the late 1970s for the right to march in Skokie, Illinois, a Chicago suburb with a heavily Jewish population. Collin later settled for the right to march in Marquette Park on Chicago's south side. Yet today's young fascists have learned from the mistakes of Collin's Illinois Nazis, whose campy cosplay was memorably lampooned in the movie The Blues Brothers. As NPR reported, Patriot Front scrupulously avoids swastikas and Nazi salutes, preferring to wrap themselves in classically American symbols and to present themselves as orderly and public-spirited. On July 4th, they got the publicity bump they were hoping for. A Reuters photographer captured a Pulitzer-worthy news photo of a black woman sitting quietly alone on a subway car surrounded by masked frontmen on their best silent behavior. Sights like that cause me to keep reminding myself that no, this is not the 1960s. We've come a long way since those bad old days, to be sure, but as today's politics keep reminding us, we still have a long way to go. We're a nation that elected a black man to our highest office, but we also elected Donald Trump. But I'm still curious about what motivates the 400 or so young men to leave their homes and take to the streets dressed like demented preppies. Their grievances, I have to say, are not very well articulated, judging by the Patriot Front website. Is it to fill a void of fellowship and meaning in an increasingly online world? Is this the dark side, or if you prefer, the white side of the social media manosphere?
Well, that's the popular label for the myriad websites, blogs, podcasters, and online forums that promote a hyped-up version of masculinity, misogyny, and anti-feminism to an audience that seems endlessly hungry for such content. It's hard to disentangle the ideological strands of online hard right, but a similar discourse has grown up around white identity. A thread that runs through the neo-Nazi and other hard right groups is the fear of other races whose numbers in society and place in society seems to them uncomfortably on the rise at the expense of white men. Consider the so-called Great Replacement conspiracy theory. This is a notion endlessly propagated online that white populations in modern Western countries are being replaced by brown and black alien populations, and that this replacement is a project commonly attributed to the Jews. This was behind the infamous chant at Unite the Right in Charleston, "Jews will not replace us." It also supplied the motive of the murderer who killed 11 people at the Tree of Life Synagogue in Pittsburgh in 2018, as well as numerous other attacks. As a nation, we have been slow to understand the hate-inflected extremism that flourishes in a new media landscape with no editorial oversight and no sanction for the harm bad actors may do, nor is it obvious what to do about it. Yet I am still old-fashioned enough to believe that we do our young men and women a very valuable service by encouraging to live, learn, and work together across racial, religious, and gender lines as Americans. That's true patriotism to me, front, back, and sideways.
You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. At 29 minutes past the hour, we turn now to the page with a couple of local perspectives. The one called My View today comes from Linda O'Connor of Orchard Park, who hopes her little friend made it to adulthood safely. Long neck, that's what I called the featherless baby robin I found in my elevated garden bed. With its unusually long neck and wide open beak, it got my attention. I searched for its nest and spotted it hidden behind some leaves on an overhead branch. Now what to do? I was afraid if I interfered, my scent would scare off its parents. A quick Google search proved otherwise. According to what I found online, birds do not have a strong sense of smell and won't abandon a chick because a human touched it. But because this little bird was so young, it was unable to regulate its body temperature or feed itself. It needed to be returned to the nest soon or face certain death. I approached my husband. Although his first response was to let nature take its course, I coerced him into helping. With my husband holding tight to the ladder, I climbed the rungs with the baby safely in my gloved hands and deposited Longneck back into its nest. Satisfied, I went about my day, glancing out my kitchen window from time to time, happy to see the adult robins return to the nest again and again. I figured Longneck was being fed and cared for. If only that had been the case. I was shaken to later find Longneck back in my garden. I eyed the overhead branch. I was sure the small bird could not have inched its way out of the deep nest. Could the parents have thrown out their baby, I wondered? Maybe my husband's initial response was right. Maybe the little bird was sick or injured and could not survive even with proper care. Maybe that's why it was tossed away. I decided not to intervene a second time. That decision lasted all of 10 minutes. My youngest daughter happened to call, and upon hearing my tale, convinced me to try again. The baby will die if you don't help. At least give it a chance, she pleaded. I remembered reading about orphaned or rejected animal babies being raised by surrogate animal parents, and an idea started to form. Maybe another robin would foster Longneck. We happened to have a second robin's nest nearby. Although the baby birds in that nest had feathers and were further developed, I placed Longneck in the new nest, hoping those robins would care for him. In hindsight, I should have done more research before placing the bird in a new nest. If I had, I would have learned that robins don't typically take in and care for another's chicks. According to what I read after I intervened the second time, adult robins have strong feeding instincts triggered by a begging baby, but they recognize their own offspring and don't accept outsiders into their nest. I feared my intervention would fail. I crossed my fingers and hoped for the best. Surprisingly, the next day the baby bird was very much alive and visible in its new nest. I could see its long neck extending for food as the adult robins made their way back and forth between feedings. Maybe my plan worked. Days passed, and the nest was soon empty. There was no sign of Longneck. I'd like to believe I saved the little guy, but I can't be sure. Maybe someday I'll see a robin with an incredibly long neck and recognize the nestling. In the meantime, I can sleep at night knowing I gave it my all.
I hope that little bird made it. Well, from another voice, a story about justice from Christopher J. Belling, who was an attorney in Buffalo. Blanche has no respect for the rule of law. I prosecuted mostly murder cases on behalf of the people of the state of New York in at least 10 of the 62 counties in the state over nearly 50 years. This gives me a well-developed appreciation for the rule of law as a cornerstone of our democracy. Based on his conduct, while Deputy Attorney General and Acting Attorney General Todd Blanche's nomination to serve as Attorney General should be rejected by the U.S. Senate. Blanche has already done great damage to the justice system and to the rule of law in America and put the American people in danger by firing hundreds of career prosecutors and FBI agents. His attacks on judges he disagrees with are probably unethical and clearly irresponsible. He's abusing his power and wasting taxpayer resources by focusing on an endless series of revenge prosecutions that are not in the interest of justice. These prosecutions are in direct contradiction to his testimony at his confirmation hearing for Deputy Attorney General. Blanche's betrayal of the victims of Jeffrey Epstein's crimes is unconscionable. Blanche has personally caused the Department of Justice to violate the Epstein Files Transparency Act, especially concerning Blanche's involvement in arranging for Ghislaine Maxwell to be transferred to a minimum security prison camp. The so-called anti-weaponization slush fund is also concerning. Blanche betrayed his obligation to the people of the United States by participating in a sham lawsuit. His obligation was to move to dismiss the case. He did not do so. Instead, he purported to settle the bogus case with the slush fund settlement. A judge before whom the case was pending agrees. Blanche further betrayed his obligation to the American people when he proposed the addendum to the settlement that would immunize President Trump and his family from IRS scrutiny. Historically, it was the Department of Justice that made sure the executive branch of our government did not overreach. With the Department of Justice behaving as Trump's personal lawyers, there's no one left to keep the rule of law alive. We need an attorney general who is loyal to the Constitution and the law. Blanche is not, and his track record proves it. The Senate must put the law and the Constitution ahead of politics by voting against Blanche. And again, that's from Christopher J. Belling, an attorney in Buffalo.
Mr. Belling leaves no room for doubt about his opinion on the matter.
Yeah, why don't you tell us what you really think? Well, I agree with the guy.
Here we go. We're going to turn now to the business pages. And we're going to find that search for value ignites a private label revolution. Shoppers shift to store brands as inflation eats into budgets. This from Reuters, writers Nicholas Brown and Juveria Tabassum. Bill Peterson used to go to Whole Foods or Kroger for fruits, vegetables, and milk. Now he swears by private label chain Aldi, which sells those items at a fraction of the price. The Chicago home remodeler is gainfully employed, but says the economy feels fragile. There's no job security. Everything has gotten stupid expensive, said Peterson, age 61. Having grown up without money, Peterson had long avoided private labels, distancing himself from a category associated with poor quality. Not anymore. That stigma is pretty much gone, he said. Inflation has remained high for several years, and U.S. consumers have become more focused on value. But the shift transcends income, and experts increasingly see it as the start of a deeper retrenchment in how Americans shop, eliminating a long-held stigma among some for private label goods. Inflation is just an accelerant to fundamental shifts already set to unfold, said Sarah Henry, managing partner at Logan Capital Management. Retailers are adjusting by targeting the trade-down consumer, a category that includes cash-strapped shoppers opting for lower-priced essentials and wealthier consumers looking to save on discretionary items. From January through May, value retailers grew sales 11.6% year-on-year against just 2.3% for conventional retailers, according to researchers at Nielsen IQ. Shopping smart has become a mindset, not a customer segment, said Julie Barber, Walmart's chief merchandising officer. Walmart, the nation's largest retailer, is increasing the number of items under its Better Goods food label to nearly 1,000, according to a June note from RBC analyst Nick Modi. Walmart has not confirmed that figure, but when it launched Better Goods in 2024, its 300 initial items made it Walmart's largest private brand food launch in 20 years, the company said. Modi wrote that private brands are being elevated from a defensive tactic to a core growth strategy, adding that the trend is a structural commitment rather than cyclical opportunism. Aldi is betting that's true. The German chain, which now has around 2,700 U.S. stores, is on track to open 180 more this year and another 400 through 2028. High inflation or low inflation, high unemployment or low unemployment, there are always consumers who are looking to save money, Scott Patton, chief commercial officer of Aldi's U.S. arm, told Reuters. I think consumers have figured out they don't need national brands. Amy Fox, a Cincinnati area business owner, has enough disposable income not to worry day to day. Even so, as grocery bills rise, especially with 3 sons in college, life has started to feel like death by 1,000 cuts, she said. High inflation and sticker shock from rising energy and grocery bills are driving the hunt for value, said Dana Peterson, chief economist at research group The Conference Board. But industry experts see more fundamental factors at work, ones that could make trading down the new normal. Customers' sense of the future has been clouded by existential concerns like job loss due to the proliferation of AI, while AI itself has made bargain hunting easier than ever, said Henry. Target's owned brands, which account for around 30% of its sales, will add 600 private label food and beverage items over the next 2 years, a spokeswoman said, including 400 in its flagship grocery brand Good and Gather. Dollar General said consumers across income levels are prioritizing value. The company is rolling out new private brand products and more than 70 back-to-school items priced at $1 or less, it said.
Yeah, prices are definitely going up like a rocket ship. Now from John Tofi on CNN, bond market is flashing red about the Iran war. Rising oil prices, persistent inflation fears, and shifting expectations for rate hikes are rattling the world bond market, sending Treasury yields higher and pushing up borrowing costs for consumers. The 10-year U.S. Treasury yield on Thursday rose 4 basis points to 4.71%, its highest level since January of 2025. Prior to the war with Iran, which started in late February, the 10-year yield dipped below 4%. Renewed tensions between Washington and Tehran have pushed up oil prices again, and Brent crude hitting $100 per barrel Thursday. The conflict has rocked the massive Treasury market with roughly $30 million in value as investors weigh the impact of surging oil prices and the possibility that the Federal Reserve could keep interest rates higher for longer or even raise them if inflationary pressures intensify. Bond yields rise when prices fall. Markets are pricing in a 36% chance the Federal rate hikes rates its policy meeting next week, according to the CME FedWatch. Investors are also demanding a higher yield on Treasuries compensate for the risk of inflation eating into their return. The U.S. 10-year yield helps determine borrowing costs across the economy, including the 30-year mortgage rate. Mortgage rates last week hit the highest level since the start of the war with Iran. Meanwhile, the bond market is adjusting to the start of Kevin Warsh's term as Fed chair. Traders are trying to discern the outlook for Fed policy under Warsh. That's probably the biggest driver as of right now, the Kevin Warsh story and how he approaches his position as Fed chair, said Tom Tsitsouris, head of fixed income research at Baird Strategas. Warsh took the reins at the Fed in May after 8 years with the former Fed chair Jerome Powell at the helm. The new head has pledged reform at the central bank and appointed task forces to review topics including communications, inflation frameworks, and balance sheet policy. The war with Iran and subsequent rise in energy prices has shifted the outlook for central banks across the globe. The prospect of higher central bank interest rates is pushing bond yields higher in the United States, Europe, and Asia. There are also growing nerves about the government deficits across the globe. The war in Iran so far has cost the United States $37.5 billion, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth said on Tuesday. Higher deficits mean governments could have to issue more bonds to help pay their spending. The increase in supply of bonds, coupled with nerves about shakier government finances, could prompt traders to demand higher yields. The 30-year yield in May hit its highest level since 2007. The bond market moves come days after J.P. Morgan Chase CEO Jamie Dimon said that he wouldn't purchase long-dated U.S. Treasuries like 10-year bonds at current prices. Dimon said he doesn't see the appeal of Treasuries amid lingering concerns about inflation and government deficits. Dimon said deficit issues facing major economies, including the United States, will become a problem. For now, traders are watching to see whether tensions around the Strait of Hormuz and the Red Sea will escalate or ease. Bad news.
As part of our newspaper reading, we now present the day's death listings. If you need further information on any of these names, call us at 716-821-5555. That's 716-821-5555. Just a few names in the death listings today. Johnson, Carl Winston, born in Lackawanna, but passed away peacefully last month in Mableton, Georgia. He was 85 years old. Livingston, Mary Jo, born and raised in South Buffalo, died on July 16th, but it doesn't say when she was born, so we don't know how old she was. And Lynch, Dr. Michael J., age 93, born in Webster, but passed away in the comfort of his own home in East Aurora. Several obituaries from the national writers. Jennifer Finch, bassist for LA alt-rock band L7. She has had an aggressive form of brain cancer and died at age 59, according to a statement from the band. We are shattered by the loss of our beloved bandmate, sister, and friend, Jennifer Finch, whose fierce spirit, humor, and boundless creativity helped shape L7 and changed all of our lives forever, the group said in a statement. Jennifer was a true original who lived entirely on her own terms, and the impact she made on music, art, and everyone lucky enough to know her cannot be measured. We love her beyond words and will carry her with us always. Rest in power, dear friend. She was receiving ongoing treatment for brain cancer, and earlier this month backed out of the band's planned final tour. So the family opened a GoFundMe fund to support her medical care, saying, "We love her and we want her to feel the full strength of the community that has loved and supported her for so many years." Another musician, Plas Johnson, age 94, a jazz saxophonist for Pink Panther. Plas Johnson, the jazz saxophonist best known for his ageless solo on the theme to the Pink Panther, has died.
Yeah, I remember that.
He was 90.
Who doesn't?
He was 94. He died in Grenada Hills. It was reported in his Louisiana hometown newspaper, the Donaldsonville Chief. No cause of death was provided. According to Long Beach Jazz station KKJZ, which also memorialized Johnson's death, Johnson learned saxophone from his father and attended Westlake School of Music in Los Angeles after his Army service in 1951. After moving to Los Angeles, he became a favorite live and session player for many mid-century greats, including Frank Sinatra, Nat King Cole, or Marvin Gaye. He says, "You don't improve your jazz in the studio. You're in the studio because of the jazz and blues that you know. My solos always seem to bring up the record another notch. I could do that in 8 bars. I could do that in 12 bars. And I used to maybe do fills behind the vocalist after that." The 8 bars and 12 bars alludes to the famous
Right.
Jazz and blues.
Right. Everybody
duration.
knows that song.
Everybody. And finally, Godzilla vs. Kong star Kaylee Huddy died after a car crash in Maryland earlier this week. She was 18. The actress' father, Joshua Huddy, confirmed the news to TMZ on Wednesday, and he shared a 20-minute live stream on Facebook communicating with followers in American Sign Language. In the 2021 movie, Kaylee's character, a native of Skull Island, communicated with Kong through sign language. She also appeared in the 2024 sequel, Godzilla x Kong, The New Empire. So, sad news there. 18-year-old. Again, if you want any further information, give us a call at 716-821-5555.
And we'll now move on to some entertainment with the Royal Stars and George Nichols. Happy birthday for Friday, July 24th of 2026. You're energetic, sympathetic, and sensitive. You have enthusiasm for what you believe. Exciting changes will bring you increased personal freedom this year. And the stars show the kind of day you'll have: 5 being dynamic, 4 positive, 3 average, 2 so-so, and 1 difficult. And everybody's got a whole pile of stars today, 4 and 5. So it should be a good day, let's hope. Aries, 5 stars. This is a lovely romantic day. In particular, it's the perfect day to tell someone how much you care for them. Well, that's worth 5 stars. Tonight, study and learn. Taurus is 4 stars. All your conversations with others are charming today because you have the gift of gab. Your words are sweet and people will want to hear what you have to say. Tonight, check your finances. Gemini is 4 stars. Financial discussions will go well today because you will be tactful, diplomatic, and also convincing in a subtle way. You also might shop for beautiful things today. Tonight, be affectionate. Cancer is 4 stars. This is a great day to play hooky. Oh, I want to do that. I wish I was Cancer. Visit art galleries, museums, architectural buildings, and parks. Tonight, get organized. Leo is 5 stars. Accept invitations to socialize. Sports events, the arts, museums, galleries, and fun activities with kids will appeal. Tonight, socialize and have fun. Virgo, 4 stars. Romance is in the air today, making this a lovely, sociable day. However, it's also an excellent day for you to buy wardrobe goodies. Tonight, relax. Libra is 5 stars. You can make great strides in whatever you want to do today because you make such a great impression on parents, bosses, VIPs, and the police. Okay, that part does not sound good. You can sweet talk your way into or out of anything. Tonight, interesting conversations. Scorpio is 4 stars. This is the perfect day to explore avenues in higher education, publishing, the media, medicine, the law, and anything to do with travel. Doors will open for you because you're admired, well-spoken, and convincing. And tonight, maintain your possessions. Sagittarius, 5 stars. This is a 5-star day for you. You will find that financial discussions about shared property or anything that's jointly held with someone will favor you. Tonight, you win. Capricorn, 4 stars. This is the perfect day to tell someone close to you how much they mean to you. Travel plans look appealing tonight. Enjoy privacy. Aquarius is 5 stars. Some of you might have a crush on a coworker or person involved with your health regimen. You might also get caught up in competitive sports and athletics because it is appealing. Tonight, be friendly. And Pisces is 5 stars. Enjoy the company of loved ones. Do something special for your main squeeze. You will also enjoy appreciating the arts and creative work of others. Tonight, you're admired. So there's your stars. And for today in history, in 1847, after 18 months of hundreds of miles of travel, Brigham Young led a group of 148 Mormon pioneers into Utah's Valley of the Great Salt Lake. In 1866, Tennessee regained congressional representation and became the first Confederate state to be readmitted to the Union after it ratified the 14th Amendment. In 1911, with the help of locals in the region, American archaeologist Hiram Bingham III rediscovered the ruins of Machu Picchu, an ancient settlement and citadel of the Incas tucked away in the countryside of southern Peru. In 1915, the passenger ship SS Eastland rolled over as Port Sewell docked at the Chicago River in Chicago, and a total of 844 passenger and crew were killed in one of the worst maritime disasters in U.S. history. In 1959, U.S. Vice President Richard Nixon and Soviet Premier Nikita Khrushchev engaged in impromptu debate over each other nation's policies and progress at the American National Exhibition in Sokolniki Park in Moscow. The heated conversation reached its peak when the two leaders toured a model of an American kitchen, whereby the infamous incident got its nickname, the Kitchen Debate. And in 1969, Apollo 11, the first manned mission to the surface of the moon, landed back on Earth, splashing into the Pacific Ocean. So there's history for you.
There is history for you. Back to the financial pages. Jonathan Epstein reports that a downtown Jamestown landmark that was built more than 100 years ago as a furniture exhibition center is for sale, along with 4 adjacent parking lots, as a leading local foundation works to build momentum for redevelopment. The nonprofit Gebby Foundation is coordinating an effort by the city and 3 different property owners to promote the sale and reuse of the historic 9-story furniture exposition mart building. Officials hope to see it revitalized as a vibrant downtown hub with ground floor retail, conference space, mixed income apartments, office space, and a boutique hotel. That building is a key structure in the downtown, and it is in need of being redeveloped, said Greg Edwards, CEO of the foundation and former Chautauqua County executive. It's a key opportunity for a developer to be right in the mix of Jamestown's growth. Located at 111 West 2nd Street, the 172,000 square foot building sits along the Chattahoochee River, across from the National Comedy Center, 1 block from the Northwest Arena, and near the Lucy Desi Museum and the Jamestown Riverwalk. Built in 1910, it's considered one of the city's most historically and architecturally significant landmarks. The Furniture Mart was designed as a permanent trade building, allowing 8 local manufacturers in to display their products for buyers, wholesalers, and retailers, particularly through biannual expositions. Each company had its own floor, and clients could meet with the manufacturers and then place their orders. Since its heyday, however, local manufacturing has declined significantly, and the mostly vacant building has fallen into disuse. The lower 5 floors were already converted to office space, but the upper 4 floors remain empty and wide open, enabling an easier redevelopment. Its owner, Arthur N. Bailey Jr.'s Meritocracy Ventures Limited, wants to sell it after 50 years, and Gebbe Foundation is using its position as a neutral benefactor to cobble together a package of properties that would also provide adequate parking. Gebbe is a private foundation with more than $83 million in assets. It works with city officials and other nonprofits to support economic development in Jamestown. Its most likely use is a mixed use with dramatic or higher-end residential on the upper floors because it has such a dramatic view of the Chattahoochee River and surrounding area. Edwards said it's a unique building, well maintained. In fact, a schematic with tentative plans for one concept shows mixed-income residential on the top floors, followed by a 3-floor boutique hotel, meeting and conference space on the 2nd floor, and retail and amenities on the ground floor. According to marketing materials for the property, such an adaptive reuse project would likely cost $40 million, including $1.9 million for acquisition, $35 million for redevelopment, and $3.3 million for masonry stabilization. But potential 18-month project would benefit from a $1.35 million Regional Economic Development Council grant, as well as lucrative state and federal historic tax credits to cover 30% of the cost. It could also qualify for property, sales, and mortgage recording tax breaks. And it's one of 24 projects cited in the $10 million Downtown Revitalization Initiative grant that Jamestown received from the state, the second such grant in 10 years. The city also has an urban design plan that Gebbe helped to develop and is already in the midst of a $2 million investment into upgrading its waterfront, with another $4 million to follow. While we might not have 10,000 people on a Thursday down there listening to music and entertainment, it is a significant growth opportunity, just like what Buffalo has experienced, Edwards said, citing Canalside. And a 2021 downtown living study found a need for at least 76 more housing units, which Edwards said has only grown since then, as Jamestown has become a haven for the folks that discovered us during COVID as an alternative to big city living, while also attracting people who wanted to get away from urban environmental issues. It's an exciting time for development in the city of Jamestown, Edwards said, and the nice thing for a developer is that the price points are still low compared to other parts of western New York. Well, it'll be interesting to see how that goes.
Oh, yeah.
You're listening to a reading of articles in the Buffalo News for today, Friday, July 24th. On your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, we'll return for more readings after this short break. Your readers today are
J.J. Patek
and Don Williams.
If you're listening to this publication online, you're probably using our website, a podcast player like Spotify or iTunes, a streaming service like Siro, or a smart speaker. Did you know that we now have a dedicated app that can be downloaded to any mobile device, like a smartphone or tablet, for free? App users can conveniently access our live stream and any episode of our podcast easier than ever. To download the app, just type NFRRS in the search window in the Apple App Store or in the Google Play Store. Contact us anytime if you have any questions by calling 716-821-5555, extension 5. Thank you.
And we'll continue now with our reading of articles from today's Buffalo News. Your readers are
Don Williams,
J.J. Patek, and we'll move on to a rather sad story in a city and region. Aide held in sexual assault of resident in nursing home. This is from John Harris. A certified nurse aide at a Tonawanda nursing home is facing 2 felony charges after he allegedly sexually assaulted a resident with dementia earlier this month. New York Attorney General Letitia James announced late Wednesday. Isaiah Favors, 38, of Buffalo, was arrested Wednesday and charged with second-degree rape and first-degree endangering the welfare of an incompetent or physically disabled person, both felonies, related to an incident July 7th at the Macaulay residence at 1503 Military Road. My prayers are with the victims and their family who deserve justice after enduring this horrific crime, James said in the statement. My office is conducting a full investigation and we will use every resource at our disposal to deliver justice in this case and ensure all nursing home residents are kept safe. I thank our partners in law enforcement for their collaboration in this investigation. Favors was arraigned Wednesday in the Tonawanda Town Court with bail set at $100,000 cash or a partially secured surety bond. If convicted, he could face a maximum sentence of 7 years in prison. According to the Attorney General's office, Favors allegedly sexually assaulted the resident in her room at the Macaulay residence around 12:10 a.m. July 7th. A witness immediately reported the incident to the facility's management, and the victim was transported to a hospital where a rape test kit was conducted. Tonawanda Police reported the matter to the Attorney General's office. Catholic Health owns and operates Macaulay Residence, a 160-bed long-term care and subacute care facility that has a 5-star or much above overall rating on the U.S. Centers for Medicare and Medicaid Services Care Companion website. The nursing home is near Kenmore Mercy Hospital. Once the allegation of sexual assault against a resident was reported, Catholic Health said that it immediately removed the accused employee from the nursing home and alerted law enforcement and the state health department. We've cooperated fully with the investigation and remain committed to supporting them as they continue, Catholic Health said. From the start, our priority has always been and will remain maintaining the safety, dignity, and well-being of our residents, visitors, and associates. We respect the investigative and legal process, and we are grateful to our law enforcement and regulatory agency partners for their swift and professional response to this matter. We will continue to support our residents, their families, and our associates through this difficult situation. The Macaulay residence has received no federal fines in the last 3 years. There have been no state enforcement actions against the nursing home over the last decade, from July 1st of 2015 to June 30th of 2025, according to the State Health Department records. Asked whether this recent incident could lead to the inspection of the Macaulay resident, Health Department spokesperson Marissa Crary said the department can't comment on the status of the specific allegations. The health and well-being of nursing home residents is and will continue to be a top priority in New York State Department of Health, Crary said. The department investigates all incidents of reported abuse and cooperates with law enforcement as applicable. In the news release Wednesday evening, the Attorney General's office said the case against Favors is part of an ongoing investigation by the office's Medicaid Fraud Control Unit.
Meanwhile, Sandra Tan reports that the county is giving up stadium insurance. Erie County is officially giving up any private insurance policy to cover lawsuits against Sheriff's Office deputies that might result if any face criminal misconduct accusations in their interactions with people attending Buffalo Bills games. The county legislature approved the change yesterday among a series of other security agreement changes, but not without some skepticism and testy exchanges between the county attorney and a legislator who thinks the new deal is a bad one. I don't think it's fair that we're taking all the risk, number one, and capping off all the risk to the Bills, said legislator Gene Vinal a Democrat from Amherst. She suggested the county should demand the Bills provide their own security. We agreed in 2023 to provide security through the sheriff, responded County Attorney Jeremy Toth, who said Vinnell's position was not rational. If you want to change that, that is a conversation that should have started about 5 years ago. The county's expiring $1 million insurance policy that protects the county and sheriff's deputies against lawsuits stemming from stadium altercations with visitors is both expensive and rarely used. The last time a lawsuit resulted in a major claim against a sheriff's deputy and required an insurance payout stemmed from a 9-year-old incident when a deputy beat up a Bills fan who swore at him. But the county's private insurance carrier, Acceptance Indemnity, dropped this insurance coverage as an option to buy. That has left the county scrambling for alternatives with the new Bills season gearing up. Given that the soon expiring insurance carries a premium of more than $500,000 and insures for only for up to $1 million, the county and its insurance broker recommended giving up on outside insurance and self-insuring any future stadium claims against sheriff's deputies. Erie County has long paid for most legal settlements with taxpayer dollars. However, the Bills previously insisted the county carry private liability insurance for stadium security claims. Under the new agreement, however, the Bills have dropped that demand. The decision to self-insure is among the most consequential in a new stadium security agreement reached with the Buffalo Bills. The county legislature unanimously approved the revised stadium security agreement, though Vinnell said she had lost her place on the agenda during the formal session and voted for the resolution by mistake. She thought about recalling her vote, she said, but decided that since the Bills will be welcoming the public within a couple of weeks, she'd let the matter go. But I still think it's wrong, she said. But losing your place in the agenda is not wrong. Oh, well. The proposed change in insurance coverage is not the only change made to the amended security agreement between Erie County and the Bills, which was last reached in 2023 as part of the new stadium deal. In addition to the Bills continuing to reimburse the county for sheriff's office security personnel on site, the Bills have also agreed to reimburse the county for services provided by the county's Department of Homeland Security and the Department of Public Works, which facilitates traffic setup services. The county, working with state police, will continue to provide traffic-controlled services on the public streets surrounding the new Bills Stadium without reimbursement from the team. The security agreement applies to both Bills games and other events held at the new Highmark Stadium facility. The change in county liability coverage is the most noteworthy, however, because of the calculated risk being taken by the county. This is a better deal for the Erie County, Toth said. It is not the greatest deal. In fact, we could go back to the Bills and say, you know what, you pay for everything. We absolutely could do that. You won't get anywhere, but we could absolutely do that. You don't feel comfortable asking the Bills to put us in the same situation as we were, Vinnell responded. That's my problem. The upside is that taxpayers will no longer have to pay $500,000 or more each year for an insurance policy that typically goes unused. That has the potential to save both the county and the Bills hundreds of thousands of dollars each year on insurance costs, but only if serious claims against sheriff's staff continue to be a rarity. Vinnell pointed out that the $1 million cap on the existing soon-to-expire county insurance policy isn't just $1 million, but $1 million per incident. So, while the insurance premium costs the county more than $500,000, if the county faced multiple high-value claims in a year, she said county taxpayers are far better protected under the pre-existing insurance arrangement. Under the new agreement, no matter how many stadium claims are filed against the county in a given year, the Bills would pay only up to $250,000, while the county would face unlimited liability exposure. Toth conceded that was true, but he also said past history does not suggest that it is likely. There's been one claim on this policy since I've been in the county attorney's office, he said, so that's why an insurance broker thinks this is worth the risk. The last time the county had to file a claim against its stadium security policy was in the case of former sheriff's deputy Kenneth Achtel. An Orchard Park jury convicted him in 2019 of reckless assault, official misconduct, and falsifying business records after body camera video showed an unprovoked attack on a college student who lobbed a curse word at him, resulting in this fan suffering a broken nose and concussion. In the civil case, the county settled with the victim, Nicholas Belcito, for $1.1 million. The insurer at the time, AXA XL Insurance, paid out its policy maximum of $1 million in the county, or in the Echtel case, while the county paid the remaining $100,000. Toth said that based on his conversations with the county's insurance broker, Lawley Insurance, it's possible a new $1 million policy could cost more than $600,000 annually. Vanel said she still considers the deal a lopsided win for the Bills and an unreasonable open-ended risk for taxpayers. Look, I've never once gotten you to agree with anything that comes out of my mouth, Toth responded, speaking over Vanel's protest that this wasn't true. I'm not going to get you to agree on this. I don't know what else to tell you.
Nothing but arguments. Well, Cheektowaga Democrats back social worker to replace Nowicki. This is from Matt Tronfio. The Cheektowaga Democrats on Thursday announced their nomination to fill a town board seat that was left vacant after the previous holder was revealed to be living outside the community he represented. Rachel Martinez, a social worker and Nazareth College graduate who has lived in Cheektowaga for 10 years, will be the endorsed Democratic candidate on the November 3rd ballot. She will face a Republican challenger who is yet to be announced and possibly two more yet unnamed opponents. Until recently, Martinez had no prior experience in government. But earlier this year, she became a fixture at town board meetings. On multiple occasions, she's spoken out against police cooperation with federal immigration agents and raised concerns about widespread use of flock surveillance cameras. As a social worker, Martinez said she wants to use her time in government to help reduce barriers people encounter to living full and productive lives. Systems are not easy to navigate, she said. Something as simple as getting a mental health appointment and getting health insurance can be extremely difficult. Cheektowaga Supervisor Brian Nowak, who supported her candidacy for the Democratic nomination throughout the process, applauded her involvement in local governance and town hall meetings. In Rachel, we have someone with a social work background, and she brings a problem-solving mindset to the table. Somebody that's able to listen and learn, Nowak said. I want hardworking people to be on our town board. Councilman Nowicki was a hardworking councilman, and I think in that respect she's someone that can fill that. The seat Martinez is seeking was abandoned by Stephen Nowicki after it was revealed that his primary residence was in Buffalo, not Cheektowaga. On April 14th, just months after taking office, Nowicki and Robia Williams purchased a single-family home on Bryan Street in Buffalo's Elmwood Village for $565,000, according to a deed recorded with the Erie County Clerk's Office. But records show that he still appears to own a $76,400 multi-family residential property on Pleasant Parkway in Cheektowaga. Upon learning the Buffalo resident was Nowicki's primary resident, the party leaders pressed him to resign. Nowicki had explained to other news outlets that he misunderstood the mortgage agreement before signing it, which forced him to label the Bryan Street apartment as his primary residence. He did not reply to multiple requests for comment. Since Nowicki resigned from his seat after June's primary elections, but before the November general elections, it was too late for voters to choose his replacements through primary process. Instead, election procedure allowed the four parties registered in the county to choose a replacement and let the voters take their pick of the appointed candidates in November. Aside from the Democratic and Republican parties, the Conservative and Working Families parties are also eligible to nominate a candidate, but neither has done so yet. Thomas Ruley, the local chair for the Working Families parties, said it asked Martinez to complete a questionnaire and will consider endorsing her based on her answers. The local Republican committee chair, Don Filipski, called out Martinez's opposition on flock cameras, suggesting her position was anti-law enforcement. Being an anti-police socialist must be a requirement for today's Cheektowaga Democrats, Filipski said. Like Stephen Nowicki, Rachel Martinez is well to the left of the values held by most Cheektowaga residents. Martinez agreed that her beliefs fall a little further left than the average Democratic Party member, but she doesn't consider herself a socialist. I'm looking at things policy by policy, she said. I want to see data. I want to make decisions that make sense. Filipski said Republicans plan to announce a candidate early next week who believes in public safety, lower taxes, smaller government, and putting people back in charge of town government. While Nowicki's seat remains vacant, board members have the option to appoint an interim board member who would serve through December 31st until the victorious candidate takes over January 1st. There's been some interest within the Democratic committee to fill the vacancy this year, Nowak said. Should the board, of which Democrats hold a majority, opt not to temporarily fill the seat, November's victor would fill the position when election results are certified.
Well, John Harris reports that at a time when healthcare resources are leaving rural communities, University of Rochester Medicine has a more than $4 million plan to build a rural health clinic in Allegheny County. The proposal calls for Jones Memorial Hospital in Wellsville, one of 9 hospitals within University of Rochester Medicine, to develop and operate the clinic at 19 Center Street in Cuba to expand access to outpatient primary and preventive care for residents, according to an application received by the state on Monday. The project responds to documented access gaps, demographic and socioeconomic challenges, and increasing demand for community-based primary care in a rural service area characterized by limited provider availability, an aging population, and significant transportation barriers. According to the project summary in the state's database, the clinic is intended to increase access for residents who rely on a limited number of local practices, travel to Jones Memorial Hospital, or seek care outside Allegheny County for routine services. The application notes that recent reductions in local outpatient primary care capacity have further constrained access and contributed to fragment and delayed care. The total projected cost of the clinic is $4.14 million, which includes site development, building construction, furnishings and equipment, IT integration, and startup costs. UR Medicine decided to construct a new building to allow for an efficient clinical layout. Wish them well.
Yeah. You're listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service, and the time is 16 minutes past the hour. And let's go on to sports. Okay. Let's have a look at that. And we have a story about South Buffalo's Kane signs with the Blackhawks, and this is from Rachel Lindsay. A Western New York native and the NHL's all-time leading American-born scorer won't return home. Instead, Patrick Kane will rejoin the franchise that he helped return to prominence in the early 2010s. The Chicago Blackhawks announced Thursday morning that Kane will rejoin the team, and Sportsnet's Elliot Friedman reported that Kane will sign a 2-year contract with the Blackhawks with an average annual value of $8 million. Kane reportedly was deciding between signing with the Buffalo Sabres and the Blackhawks for the 2026-27 season. The right wing grew up in South Buffalo, and he has scored 508 career goals with the Blackhawks, the New York Rangers, and Detroit Red Wings. Kane prepares for his 20th NHL season after playing the last 3 in Detroit, and he will return to the team with which he won 3 Stanley Cups from 2010 to 2015. It's coincidence that Sabres will host the Blackhawks in their home opener at 7 p.m. on October 3rd at KeyBank Center. And what it means, adding Kane wasn't going to work for the Sabres strictly from roster numbers and salary cap standpoints. As of Thursday morning, the Sabres have 15 forwards on the roster for 2026 to 27, including Josh Doan and Zach Benson, who signed long-term contract extensions earlier this year. Young players such as Konsta Helenius and Noah Ostlund, whom the Sabres value for their upside and expect to take on more significant roles this season, and center Jerry Kulich, who expects to return from missing all but 12 games in 2025-26 due to blood clots. Had Kane signed with the Sabres, he would have brought the obvious knack for scoring goals, as he scored between 15 to 26 goals each season since 2019 and 20, despite being hampered by injuries in the last 2 seasons. He also would have been an immediate fan favorite given that he grew up in Buffalo. Instead, Kane leaves Detroit and heads back to Chicago and rejoins the team that made the playoffs only once since 2017 to 18. The Blackhawks will be without forward Connor Bedard for at least the first month of the regular season after Bedard underwent surgery on his left shoulder earlier this month. I can't imagine his first game back in Chicago, just the reaction he'd get and how much juice that would bring not only to our team but our fans as well, Bednar told reporters this week before Kane signed with the Blackhawks. That would be incredible to get him to play with him and learn from him. Kane nearly triples his salary from last season. He was away on a one-year deal with an AAV of $3 million in 2025-26 in Detroit. Per Puckpedia.com, he will earn a $1 million base salary with an $8 million signing bonus for 2026-27 and will earn $1 million base salary with a $6 million signing bonus for 2026-28. Kane also has a no-movement clause for those 2 seasons. Had the Sabres signed Kane for that money, he would have been well over the cap without a corresponding move. The Sabres have a little more than $5.1 million in cap space for 2026-27 as of Thursday morning. His legacy so far, Kane will turn 38 in November, and he is one of the NHL's most prolific scorers in the modern era. The number 1 overall pick by the Blackhawks in 2007, Kane helped them win the Stanley Cup in 2010 and in 2013 and 2015. He was the Calder Trophy winner as Rookie of the Year in 2008. He won the Conn Smythe Trophy as the Stanley Cup playoffs as the most valuable player in 2013 and won the Hart Trophy as the NHL's most valuable player in 2015-16. That year, he led the NHL in scoring with 106 points, 46 goals, and 60 assists. Day in and day out for 16 seasons, Patrick captivated the city of Chicago with his dazzling skill, creating some of the most memorable moments in Blackhawks history as he helped make our storied franchise back to the pinnacle of our sports. Blackhawks general manager Kyle Davis said in a statement. He has shown on countless occasions that he knows what it takes to win at the highest levels. The Blackhawks, though, traded Kane to the Rangers in February 2023 as part of a 3-team deal with Arizona, and Kane finished the season with the Rangers before signing a 1-year, $2.75 million contract with the Red Wings that November, 6 months after he underwent surgery to resurface his right hip. Kane has played for the Red Wings for the last 3 seasons and has scored 57 goals with 106 assists in that span, including 16 power play goals and 47 power play assists. However, Kane has been on 1-year contracts for all 3 seasons. He scored 20 goals with 27 assists in 50 games in 2023-24, 21 goals with 38 assists in 72 games in 2024-25, and 16 goals with 41 assists in 67 games in 2025-26. Kane became the 50th player in the NHL history to score 500 career goals. He's also the 5th American to score 500 goals in the NHL. Joining Joe Mullen at 502, Jeremy Roenick at 513, Keith Tkachuk at 538, and Brett Hull is 741 goals. Wow. Hull was born in Belleville, Ontario, but holds U.S. citizenship. Kane became the all-time leading scorer among American-born NHL players, passing Mike Modano for that achievement on January 29th. He enters 2026-27 with 1,400 points in 1,369 NHL games. Well,
turning to football, Lance Lasowski reports shortly after his hiring as defensive coordinator, Jim Leonard sat in a second-floor office at One Bills Drive to explain to management and scouts the role of each player on his side of the ball. The conversation informed Bills general manager and president of football operations, Brandon Beane's off-season plan. Draft rankings were reordered with the coach's preferences in mind. Targets and free agency were identified. Perhaps no position on the Bills' defense needed reinforcements more than safety. Cole Bishop had a breakthrough during his second NFL season, intercepting 3 passes and playing at a Pro Bowl level for 19 games, including playoffs. Leonard needed another starter, though. Taylor Rapp and Jordan Poyer were entering free agency. 2 backups, Jordan Hancock and Damar Hamlin, were coming off significant injuries. Another intriguing undrafted second-year player, Wandy Owens, missed his rookie season. Leonard wanted versatile veteran safeties, ball-hawking playmakers who could play deep, close to the box, or line up in the slot. C.J. Gardner-Johnson and Geno Stone were signed to 1-year contracts. Hamlin was given a 1-year contract to return. And the Bills used a fifth-round draft pick on South Carolina's Jalen Kilgore. It should be a vastly improved depth chart, but the secondary success will hinge on Bishop and Gardner Johnson. On the roster, there are 7. Bishop, Gardner Johnson, Stone, Hamlin, Hancock, Owens, Kilgore, and Sam Franklin Jr. And Mr. Lisowski expects 6 of those to survive the cut, so that'll be how many we have on the 53-man roster to start the season. Most impactful offseason move, Gardner Johnson signing. There's baggage. The Bills are his 7th team in 8 seasons. There's no doubt Gardner Johnson can play. He's a significant upgrade over Rapp and Poyer. 2 seasons ago, he helped the Eagles win the Super Bowl. In 2024, Gardner Johnson had 6 interceptions and 12 passes defended. A projected starter next to Bishop, he will also line up in the slot at times. Biggest question to answer in camp? Bishop's progress became a question entering camp because he missed most of spring workouts with an undisclosed injury. He has to stay on the field. He didn't make much of an impact as a rookie because he missed most of training camp, but he was arguably the Bills' most valuable defensive player last season. Can he get enough time on task to learn a new scheme and develop chemistry with the other safeties on the roster? If so, Bishop is positioned for an even bigger season. Leonard, after all, played safety in the NFL for 10 seasons, and the Broncos' defensive backs were impressive the past 2 seasons with Leonard as their position coach. Battle to watch? What about Hancock versus Hamlin? The Bills need to see more from Hancock in year 2. It took him a while to learn Sean McDermott's defense. Perhaps Hancock's development was impacted by the coaching staff cross-training him at safety and nickel cornerback. But there's also more competition on the roster. Gardner Johnson and Stone are going to be on the team. Franklin was re-signed because of his prowess on special teams. The potential Kilgore showed us a do-it-all defensive back at South Carolina, convinced Buffalo's coaches and scouts to make him a full-time safety. Under the player radar, Kilgore is fascinating. A 3-year starter at South Carolina, Kilgore totaled 29 passes defended and 8 interceptions. He's a bigger safety, 6'1", 210, and ran a 4.4-second 40-yard dash at the combine. Plus, Kilgore has long arms and the tenacity the Bills targeted in defensive players this offseason. The tenacity, yes, he has the tenacity. Leonard and his staff will exercise patience. Kilgore played mostly cornerback in the SEC, so he'll have to adjust to a new position and scheme. Doing so, the Bills need Kilgore to carve out a role on special teams to earn a jersey on game day. Doing so would be significant for his development. We'll see how the Bills go.
Okay, we'll see what the Bills do with these people. I just want a Super Bowl. We all want a Super Bowl. We want that ring. To the Yankees, baseball. Yankees salvaged the DH split. This is from the field level media. Max Fried, or Fried, I think that's Fried, isn't it? Pitched 5 innings in a stellar return from the injured list, and Jason Dominguez hit a tie-breaking RBI double in the 7th inning on Wednesday night as the New York Yankees scored a 2-0 victory over the visiting Pittsburgh Pirates in Game 2 of the split doubleheader. New York won for the 7th time in 10 games after allowing 2 runs in the 10th inning and a 5-3 Game 1 loss. The Yankees avoided getting swept at home in a doubleheader for the first time since May 22nd of 2022 against the Chicago White Sox. After throwing just 52 pitches in his only rehab start, Fried was not only stretched in his first Major League start since May 13th, he struck out 7 and walked 1 in his 57-pitch outing. The left-hander threw 7 different pitches, averaging 96 miles per hour with his 4-seam fastball, and retired the final 12 batters he faced. Fried allowed a single to Nick Gonzalez to start his outing, but left fielder Cody Bellinger made a strong throw to second baseman Jazz Chisholm Jr. to stop him from stretching it to a double. The only other runner Fried was a walk to rookie Esmeralda Valdez to start the second. The left-hander wound up with a no decision because the Yankees did little against Pittsburgh starter Bubba Chandler, who allowed 2 hits in 6 innings. Chandler struck out 5 and walked 1 before the Yankees pieced together 2 runs against Brandon Eisert. That's 2-2. Chandler was lifted after retiring Paul Goldschmidt to start the 7th. Bellinger followed with a walk and raced home on Dominguez's double on the left field corner. On the next pitch, Anthony Volpe followed with a double to left for a 2-0 lead at Dominguez, beat the left fielder Brian Reynolds' throw. After Fried's outing ended, Angel Chivali pitched a scoreless 6th exit after an infield hit by Jared Triolo. Paul Blackburn at 3-1 stranded 2 runners in the 7th and continued his emergence as a high-leverage reliever by tossing 2 innings. Will Warren 2 on in the 9th before Tim Hill retired Ryan O'Hearn to secure his 5th career save and first run since 2021. So that's it for the Yankees for today.
Yeah, well, and this still in the world of baseball. A 4-run first inning helped the visiting Baltimore Orioles earn a 5-1 victory over the Boston Red Sox in the second game of a doubleheader Wednesday, ending Boston's 15-game win streak. The winning streak was the longest in the majors since St. Louis won 17 in a row in 2021. Had Boston won, the Red Sox would have set a franchise record for consecutive victories. So they tied the record from 1946, the year I was born, the club's record of 15 straight. Kyle Bradish, 7-9, pitched 6 innings to earn the win. He held the Red Sox to 1 run on 4 hits, struck out 4, and walked 1. Yenny Urcano, Andrew Kittredge, and Tyler Wells each tossed a scoreless inning of relief for the Orioles, who won despite going 1 for 9 with runners in scoring position, but the Red Sox were limited to 5 hits. Boston starter Eduardo Rivera, 1-0, was pulled with 2 outs in the first inning. He gave up 4 runs on 3 hits and walked 2. Baltimore's 4-run first inning featured a Rivera wild pitch that allowed Pete Alonso to score, a 2-run single by Dylan Beavers, and an RBI double by Jonathan Rodriguez. All 4 runs scored with 2 outs. Beavers and Rodriguez each had 2 of Baltimore's 9 hits. So, 15-game winning streak comes to an end.
And you are listening to a reading of today's Buffalo News on your Niagara Frontier Radio reading service. It is now 31 minutes past the hour, and let's move on to advice from Asking Eric, our Eric Thompson. Family members' experiments with AI raise alarm. Dear Eric, I'm finding myself more and more fearful of AI. I have family and friends who casually upload their personal images to be AI altered. That's their prerogative, so I've never talked about my AI aversion. Recently, though, a few family members uploaded group photos, including me, to generate lighthearted, silly AI images. This bothered me a lot, to the point where I said something to one of the family members who did it. I said that while I know they had no bad intentions and the image was lighthearted and fun, it made me really uncomfortable, and I didn't want my images or my images of my family to be uploaded to AI. I felt like a total jerk saying anything at all. Now I worry that other images I share and have shared are subject to this kind of frivolity by literally anyone in my family and family circle, especially when it comes to my children. I'm not on social media. I've been off every social media outlet for more than 6 years. It all scares me, and honestly, I thought everyone knew this about me. I just hear and have read stories about AI using images for deep fake art, pornography, and gathering personal data from images, things like location tags. Is there a good way to set a boundary like this when you don't have a social media account to have a tagline that explicitly states it? Or a respectful way to tell family and friends that doesn't make me sound like I'm from the Stone Age sitting in my cave judging them and their life choices? And it's signed Millennial Neanderthal. And he answers, Dear Millennial, because AI is new and we unfortunately don't have common practices around it, It will put your mind at ease to have proactive FYI conversations with family and friends about your image and those of your children. If you wanted to put it all out at once, you might include a line in a holiday letter or something like that, but you can also just bring it up in casual conversation. I've been thinking a lot about AI, and I know it's fascinating to a lot of people, but I really don't want my image or that of my family ever uploaded. I'm just letting everybody know. If you don't want to go through your whole Rolodex, and I don't recommend you do this, you may have to accept that this isn't happening every day to you, or let the risk of letting it come up versus sending out a mass bulletin is relatively low. And dear Eric, after reading about what Coco Chanel said about perfume, my wife uses just too much. I can't induce her to use less. Is there any suggestions? And is sign too much of a good thing? The answer is, dear, too much. It depends on whether this is a matter of personal taste, yours clashing with hers, or if the smell is bothering you. If it's the former, you may need to live and let live. If it's the latter, communicate in a way that focuses on your experience rather than what she's doing wrong. For instance, you might say, the intensity of the perfume irritates my sinuses. Would you mind only wearing so much if you're going to be out of the house? Or, you need to tailor the request to your particular issue with the perfume, however. Aromas bother a lot of people. You're not alone in that. For some, it's allergies or upper respiratory issues. For others, too much of an aroma causes a headache, or worse. Think about how much the perfume is bothering you and ask her to come up with a compromise that makes you both happy. That can be a little challenging. And finally, dear Eric, I think the trials of sick and worried mom regarding talking to her daughter and employer about the support she needs to manage her current health care. Regarding her work, you rightly recommend that she speak with HR. Your other advice was for her to speak with an employment attorney if HR is not an option. That's good professional advice, but speaking with an attorney about this topic could be pricey for some basic advice. Any person employed with an organization that doesn't have HR professionals has additional options too. 1. Ask a family member or confidant to do the research for you. She could do this herself easily, but no need to add another task. 2. Find an HR consultant who can give some advice about how to begin. This is likely quicker than an attorney with more moderate pricing. You can find one online or through your local Society of Human Resources Professionals and assign more resources. And the answer is, dear resources, thank you for this follow-up. You're right, there may be lower cost options available to the letter writer that won't tax her valuable time. So,
turning back to the front page, this from Patrick LeCamp, the News Enterprise editor. For 20 years after the death threats and living in hiding, prize-winning novelist Salman Rushdie said he led a public life without any hint of trouble. That abruptly and bloodily changed August 12, 2022 at the Chautauqua Institution Amphitheater. About 10:45 a.m., Rushdie took the stage for conversation with Henry Reese about free speech and writer safety as part of a lecture series event. The two had just sat down when Hadi Maidar, then 24, climbed the stairs to the stage, ran toward Rushdie, and stabbed him with a knife more than a dozen times. I was unaware of him until he was at my side beginning to attack, Rushdie testified yesterday at Matar's terrorism trial in the U.S. District Court in Buffalo. He attacked me very violently, Rushdie, age 79, testified during his roughly 1 hour on the witness stand. The stab wounds over the 27-second attack blinded Rushdie in his right eye, severed all the tendons and most of the nerves in his left hand, and left deep wounds to his torso. Matar faces 3 terrorism charges for his assault against Rushdie, with prosecutors saying he essentially provided material support to Hezbollah, considered a terrorist group by the United States. Rushdie never mentioned Matar by name during his testimony. At first, Rushdie thought he was punched in the face, but quickly realized it was indiscriminately slashing at his body and face with the knife. Rushdie got up to try to run away, but Matar pursued him and he fell backwards, so he didn't get away from Matar. Spectators pulled the attacker off Rushdie, and then they provided care to the author, a response described by prosecutors as immediate and heroic that kept Rushdie alive. Rushdie said he felt the most pain in the left hand where the nerves had been severed, along with most of the tendons. Then he sensed trouble with his wounded, swelling right eye. I was shouting out to people, "What's happened to my eye?" Rushdie said in the courtroom, where Matar jotted notes on a legal pad or simply looked down while sitting at the defense table during the author's testimony. But the grave threat to Rushdie's life came from what Mark Perez called a small nick to his carotid artery. It is also what accounted for much of the enormous expanding lake of blood that Rushdie said he soon noticed. Perez, a medically trained firefighter for 41 years in Los Angeles County, who was in the audience that morning, testified Wednesday that he ran to the stage when Matar attacked Rushdie and grabbed the attacker's left arm as he worked with audience members to hold Matar down. Once Matar was handcuffed by a state police officer, Perez said he spotted Rushdie nearby and bleeding profusely from a hole in his neck. Perez pressed his left thumb into the right side of Rushdie's right neck wound to apply pressure to control the bleeding, providing trauma care he routinely did before retiring as a firefighter. Perez kept his thumb in Rushdie's neck for more than an hour until a helicopter flew Rushdie to an Erie, Pennsylvania hospital. Rushdie mentioned Perez by name during the recounting of the traumatic event. He held his thumb there for a considerable amount of time, Rushdie said. It felt like quite a while. What Perez did contributed to saving my life, Rushdie said. Rushdie also credited Reese for coming to his aid when the attack started, as introductory remarks had begun. Reese, co-founder of City of Asylum, a Pittsburgh residency program for writers living in exile and under threat of persecution, was to have a conversation with Rushdie about City of Asylum. We never got to have the conversation because I was attacked, Rushdie said. Rushdie said Reese very courageously attacked a 24-year-old man who was brandishing a knife. He then spent 17 days in a hospital, an Erie hospital, with his first day on a ventilator that helped make sure he could breathe. It took 5 or 6 days for him to be able to get out of the hospital bed. The medical staff stitched his eyelids shut. He eventually gained the strength to walk down corridors and then was transferred to a rehabilitation center in New York City, where he wound up spending 3 weeks. It took months for him to regain partial use of his left hand, and he never regained sight in his eye. With one good eye and one good hand, I had to learn how to redo things we take for granted, Rushdie said. The attack in front of the shocked audience, watched by jurors on video Wednesday, resulted from Matar's desire to provide support to Hezbollah, considered a terrorist group by the United States, prosecutors said. He's already serving a 25-year prison sentence for trying to kill Rushdie, convicted in a state trial last year that focused mostly on his knife attack. In the federal case, Matar is charged with providing material support to a terrorist group and committing an act of terrorism that transcended national boundaries. A federal trial will deal with Matar's intent, not simply the violent act he carried out. If convicted on the 3 federal charges, Matar could spend the rest of his life in prison. Rushdie's 1988 novel, The Satanic Verses, prompted Ayatollah Ruhollah Khomeini, then Iran's supreme leader, to issue a fatwa, a religious decree, in February 1989, ordering Muslims around the world to kill Rushdie over what some readers found as a blasphemous depiction of Islam. Matar was born in the United States to parents who immigrated from Lebanon, and he was raised in California and New Jersey. He had dual citizenship in the United States and Lebanon, and he was living with his mother in Fairfield, New Jersey, when he carried out the attack on Rushdie. Responding to the defense lawyer's questions, Rushdie said he did not know Matar, nor had he ever received any communication or threat from him before appearing at the Chautauqua Institution. I was completely unaware of his existence, Rushdie said.
And on Washington News, from John Bennett of CQ Roll Call, some foreign policy-minded senators are dismissing President Trump's assessment that Iranian officials have been disrupting the Strait of Hormuz to influence the midterm elections. Several senators, Democratic and Republican, furrowed brows and shook their heads Wednesday when asked about Trump, a day earlier replying probably when asked if Islamic Republic's aggressive actions toward vessels in the Strait were aimed at meddling in the midterms. I think they're using it strategically, which would involve politics and combat, Senate Armed Services Committee ranking member Jack Reed said with a wave of his hand, war is an extension of politics by other means, so they've used it strategically. That's their best bet to put pressure on and try to reach some sort of ceasefire or even some arrangements where they see they've succeeded, the Rhode Island Democrat said. Senator John Cornyn, a member of the Foreign Relations and Intelligence Committee, said the commander-in-chief needs to focus harder on finishing the job and getting the Strait open. The idea that we're going to go tit for tat with Iran is just, as the Texas Republican said in a brief interview, tailing off as he shook his head. They can keep this up for a long time, and we just need to open the Strait of Hormuz and come home. Cornyn lost the Republican primary in May to a Trump-backed Texas Attorney General Ken Paxton. Senator Tim Kaine, a Virginia Democrat who led the charge on a resolution that aims to limit Trump's Iran war-making abilities, reacted to Trump's assessment with mockery. I mean, what's he thinking? That Iran should not defend itself when the United States chooses to attack it? Like, oh, if Iran is going to defend itself against an illegal invasion by the United States, they must be thinking about the midterms. The Armed Services and Foreign Relations member said with a chuckle. I mean, what kind of bizarre, addled brainwash statement is that? The president clearly thought this war would last as long as his attention span. And in that, he was sadly deluded, he added. He has said, well, it's not as long as Vietnam. Do you really want to use Vietnam as your example? The senators are reacting to exchange Trump had with John Decker, a White House correspondent for Gray Television and iHeartMedia during a Tuesday Oval Office event with Trump's Lebanese counterpart. Decker asked, do you believe that Iran is trying to impact the midterm elections by threatening the Strait of Hormuz? And Trump responded, probably. They won't have any impact on me. I'm just going to do the right thing. Yeah, I don't view it as such. We're having an election period time. Everyone's saying, oh, and I'm doing something to say before. I'm doing something before. No, he added, the election. I can't think of that as having anything to do with this. Criticized over last week by even some GOP lawmakers during hearings featuring witnesses from the war cabinet, Trump then started talking about the military and law enforcement raid he ordered in Venezuela. Asked about how Trump linking Iran's Strait closure to U.S. election, Maine Independent Senator Angus King said, no, not at all. I think they're trying to play the cards they have in this conflict. I mean, I'm sure they pay attention to American politics, but I think that's something of a stretch, said King, a member of the Senate Armed Service and Intelligence Committees. They've been acting close to the Strait since March. So they've been acting to close the Strait since March, so I don't think they were thinking of the midterms in March. The United States and Iran have engaged in military strikes against one another and associated targets for 13 consecutive nights. Trump has declared a ceasefire over threatening anew in a Wednesday social media post to begin hitting the Persian country's civilian infrastructure. From this point forward, any time the Islamic Republic of Iran shoots at a ship in the Strait of Hormuz, be it by missile, rocket, drone, or any other device or weapon, the United States will bomb and destroy one bridge or power plant, including those located next to or in the capital of Tehran, he wrote. The renewed military conflict has set global oil prices surging for a fourth time since Trump joined Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in hitting targets in Iran on February 28th. The global benchmark Brent crude index, for example, surpassed the $100 a barrel mark again on Thursday. On February 27th, the day before the first U.S.-Israeli strikes, it stood at $72.48 a barrel. Paul Rakoff, president of the Righteous Media Incorporated and host of the Independent Americans podcast, said Wednesday that gas prices are very unpopular. And previously prolonged military conflicts remain fresh on Americans' mind. That makes us create a political problem for Republican candidates. I think that's why this is so unpopular. People remember Vietnam, they remember Iraq, they remember Afghanistan, and this is less popular than all of them. Started out less popular. The Iraq and Afghanistan war veteran told News Nation, this is starting out at a very low level, and that's across the board, including with the Republican base, so it's very, very unpopular. Trump, I think, wants an off-ramp, but this is the most definition of a quagmire. the Strait of Hormuz is not open. So he's really put himself into a very tough position there, he added, referring to Trump. And the longer it goes on, the more it's going to hurt him politically, and the more it's definitely going to hurt Republicans down ballot. Well.
An interesting piece here from PolitiFact. Department of Homeland Security Secretary Markwayne Mullin recently said in unequivocal terms that foreign adversaries can access voting machines and flip votes, echoing President Trump's narrative about interference in the 2020 election. We know for sure that our foreign adversaries, not our allies, foreign adversaries have parts that are vital pieces in our voting machines, Mullin said July 17th, adding that they can access what they consider the key to the back of the voting machines. They know that they can. We know that they can change voter registration and your vote. We know it's possible. There's not a question. It's not even for debate. We asked the Department of Homeland Security for more details, but it did not give any. It reiterated its call for states to help guard against non-citizen voters. The White House referred us to that department. Non-citizen voting in federal elections is rare. The process of registering to vote does not involve voting machines, but Mullin's comments about voting machines reflect concerns that security and election technology experts have long had. Voting machines have weaknesses that can allow foreign adversaries to tamper with voting machine hardware and weaken the machine's security, said J. Alex Halderman, University of Michigan computer science and engineering professor who studies electronic voting machines. Hardware attacks would allow foreign actors to manipulate the machine's security controls, but so far there's no proof of such attempts. It's important to note that there's no evidence that voting machine vulnerabilities have ever been used to attack a real U.S. election, and of course the existence of vulnerabilities does not mean those vulnerabilities will imminently be exploited, Haldeman told PolitiFact via email. The U.S. Senate Select Committee on Intelligence noted these risks in a 2019 report on Russian interference in the 2016 election. The report said that in an experiment at a security conference, participants were able to hack into voting machines to change votes, install software, and perform other unauthorized functions. But this was possible in part because the hackers were given physical access to the machines. Under real circumstances, election officials implement various measures to secure voting equipment. Machine access is restricted, and they are stored in locked areas with video surveillance. Election officials keep track of where machines are moved, and who access them. Voting machines are typically not connected to the internet or to each other, said a 2024 National Intelligence Council assessment of foreign threats after the November 5th, 2024 election. Halderman was part of an academic group in 2006 that analyzed the security of certain voting machines that had let voters cast and store their votes electronically, sometimes without a paper record of their vote. What we found was disturbing. Haldeman told the Senate Intelligence Committee in 2017 we could reprogram the machine to invisibly cause any candidate to win. In 2021, as part of a Georgia court case, Halderman also simulated a vote-stealing tactic in which an attacker hides hardware in a ballot printer to swap which candidate was marked on the ballot. The judge gave him complete access to machines, and experts argue that Halderman's findings were not realistic. If you leave the keys in an unlocked car and you're surprised that I can drive away in it, that's not a measure of the car's security. Tammy Patrick, a former elections administrator in Maricopa County, Arizona, told VoteBeat in 2022. In a 2021 report, federal intelligence agencies said they did not find proof of foreign actors attempting to manipulate election processes in the U.S. Election in 2020. Attempts to do so at scale would likely be detected through physical and cybersecurity monitoring or in audits, the report read. Andrew Appel, Princeton University professor emeritus of computer science who studies the technology policy of voting machines, said most voting machines today are more secure than the ones designed in 2000. The vulnerabilities that still exist are why most states still use paper ballots that are marked by hand and recountable by hand, Appel said. Paper ballots provide a way to verify and audit votes.
The U.S. reaches a nuclear power deal with Saudi Arabia. This is from Timothy Gardner of Reuters. The U.S. and Saudi Arabia reached an agreement on civil nuclear power, letting the kingdom enrich uranium, and build nuclear reactions using U.S. technology without requiring the SNAP UN inspection that Washington has previously demanded from Iran. Civil nuclear deal with Saudi Arabia has been in the works for years during both President Donald Trump's first administration and that of former President Joe Biden. No deal has come together before now, however, in part because of warnings from non-proliferation groups that say it could offer Saudi Arabia a path to develop nuclear weapons. Unlike the Biden plan, the Trump administration deal does not provide for Saudi Arabia to sign the so-called additional protocol that allows the UN's International Atomic Energy Agency to carry out SNAP inspections at undeclared locations. More than a year ago, Saudi Arabia switched from light-touch IAEA oversight designed for countries with very limited nuclear activities to regulate safeguards without monitoring of declared nuclear facilities. The move was part of a planned nuclear expansion that has long said will include nuclear enrichment.
And we're out of time.
So,
You've been listening to a reading of articles and features from the Buffalo News for today, Friday, July 24th, 2026. I think I got it right that time. And we read the Buffalo News live weekday and Sunday mornings at 9 a.m. and then rebroadcast at 4 p.m. We're going to close with a cartoon here. I like zits today. Mom is saying, guys, look, it's raining in Rome. Wow. Cool, Mom. And Jeremy's buddy says, there's a woman who loves her weather app. And Jeremy says, they're cute when they're learning. Any further information you'd like to get? Give us a call at 716-821-5555. Your readers today have been
JJ Patek
and Don Williams. Thanks for listening.
If you or people you know shop at any of the Dash's supermarkets, please save Dash's register tapes for radio reading. Our agency receives $2 for every $100 in Dash's register tapes. Radio reading has raised thousands of dollars so far. Anyone can drop off their Dash's tapes to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, between William and Clinton Streets. Or Dash's tapes can be mailed to the Niagara Frontier Radio Reading Service at 1199 Harlem Road, Cheektowaga, New York, 14227. Any questions on Dash's tapes for radio reading? Call us at 716-821-5555, and thanks for caring. following program is intended for listeners who are blind, have low vision, or have another print disability